Thank you for joining the Quiet Riot, where we talk film, television, and media. I'm Ainsley, and in today's video, we are going to talk The Menu. If you haven't seen this film yet, I highly recommend that you go in as blind as possible. I only saw the trailer once while I was in the theaters seeing Pearl, and after that, I didn't watch any other trailer, teaser, interview. I didn't want to know any more about it. I've really gotten in the habit of not watching trailers, or if I happen to see a trailer in the theaters, I don't watch anymore. Turn away if I'm watching anything that may have a commercial on it or any type of preview, because trailers these days tend to give you everything. I didn't want that to be ruined, and when it comes to The Menu, going in as blind as possible is the best thing that I can possibly recommend for you. It is still in theaters at this moment, but you can also see it on HBO Max. I don't know, do you want to try that and then you can come back later to see my thoughts on The Menu? As you can probably tell, I really did enjoy it myself. It is a lot of different things going on, and yet it still manages to be very cohesive, and everything just ties together beautifully. There's a lot of great energy, and your time watching this goes by so fast. The pace is very great, so the way that everything escalates, it is just like going up stairs. It's like one thing after the other, and you don't just have a bunch of stagnant space at the beginning or in the middle, and it all ties up with a lovely bow once we come to the end. Now, if you have seen this movie and you're here to hear me talk about it, I wanted to not only talk just about the film and the technique and everything that made this film a freaking masterpiece, chef's kiss, if you will. I want to talk about how it deals with elitism and elitism in general. Obviously, we are, if you've seen this, you know that we are dealing with a chef that has a very exclusive restaurant on an exclusive island. He lives there, all of his line cooks live there, and it has this very cultish vibe, which adds a lot to the intensity and the overall suspense that this movie has to offer. I want to talk about how each of the characters that surrounds Margot is a different type of elitist, and some of them I see as more old money or more traditional, where you have tech bros who, it's a fairly new form of making loads and loads of money, and you have your movie stars, and there's so much to dive deep into when it comes to The Menu. So join me as I talk about elitism in The Menu. Directed by Mark Lloyd and written by Seth Reese and Will Tracy from a story by Will Tracy, The Menu was produced by Adam McKay, Betsy Koch, and Will Ferrell, from cinematography by Peter Deming, edited by Krista Telfison, and music by Colin Stetson. The production companies used were Hyper Object Industries, Gary Sanchez Productions, TSG Entertainment, and it was distributed by Searchlight Pictures. The Menu was first released on September 10th, 2022 at TIFF, and was then released in the United States on November 18th, 2022. It has a running time of 106 minutes and was made on a budget of $30 million, coming in at the box office at $74.2 million. The Menu is billed as a horror thriller film, but it stretches boundaries of genre as a satire veering into dark comedy. It is this that allows The Menu to be watched and praised by others that don't often call themselves horror fans. 9 people dock a boat to a small island where they will pay $1,250 a head to eat food by renowned chef Slowick. What follows will have many a server shaking their heads in understanding. The menu is more than we bargained for and worth every second of watch time. I have worked in customer service for the majority of my working life, and I can definitely tell you that there were moments in this film that were kind of cathartic for me. Just being able to say or kind of do what any intrusive thought may be telling you when you're treated horribly by someone you are serving. Obviously, Chef Slowick is a villain here. He's not a good person, and he's not somebody we're necessarily supposed to root for. We're supposed to root for Margot. She is our protagonist, and she's very much an insert character for audience members. She represents the majority of us, while the others represent the 1%, or in some cases, people who want to be the 1% themselves, or just filthy rich in general. The characterization of Chef Slowick is probably one of the best characterizations for a villain I've ever seen. He's an incredible antagonist who is very much, or has become, everything that he hates. Everything that he's loved has been taken away from him because of this need and desire for a certain amount of success that is really just him trying to please other people. He's there to serve, and he just so happens to be on a pedestal, as in certain chefs like Chef Slowick in the menu tend to be, where other people might know their name. But of course, people like Tyler, played by Nicholas Hoult, simply see Chef Slowick as a chef. He does what Tyler wishes he can do or thinks that he can do, but when really put on the hot seat, he never really could. The scene with Tyler in the kitchen and when Chef Slowick whispers something in his ear is probably one of the saddest moments in the movie, as a part of me does feel bad for Tyler here. Though knowing that he knew what was going to happen that night and that he brought Margot there willingly also makes me not so sad about his situation. I do like that by the end of this, I'm able to sympathize with all of these other people, even though it's difficult for me to sympathize with them in my daily life. They're humanized here, and they're not entirely villains themselves. After all, they are victims of Chef Slowick, even if they happen to live a life that allows others to be victimized, or they victimize people themselves. We have the movie star who obviously wants people to serve him, and he wants his assistant to serve him, but then his assistant is going for something above and she wants to be in his position. And it's interesting to see that dynamic and then how everything ends up coming to an end for the assistant. My favorite characters in this, besides Margot, of course, and Chef Slowick, are definitely the tech bros, because they give some of the best comedic performances in this, as it's actually just them delivering the lines from the script and being these characters, these kind of energetic, charismatic tech bros who work for this much bigger company, and I'm assuming having these desires to make all the money in the world. Now, my assumption is maybe they're here on they don't have to pay for it when they're there, they have that kind of privilege, as they do work for the man who invested in Chef Slowick's restaurant, and so maybe they got a particular invite. But when it comes to seeing what happens to the investor, the fact that not all, but certain investors of a certain standing will very much act as if they have a lot more say in what is going on in whatever they invested in. And I'm not saying that at some point they don't, as this can happen with producers as well. They invest a certain amount of money in the movie and they want to say some things, have some say, and see what's going to happen beforehand. But when you have someone like that, they again, act like you as the server, whatever your specific position is to serve them. There's a moment specifically that stands out to me earlier on in the film in which Tyler is talking to the server and they ask his name, and then when he goes back to his seat, Margot mentions, "I noticed you didn't ask his name." And he just kind of shakes that off. Oftentimes in service, we're meant to give our names, and yet you won't always have a lot of people really engage with you in a very human way. Now, I've worked in service and I've had people who are incredibly nice and have conversations with me and they want to know me, they're genuinely interested. I've worked as a barista and the same thing has happened. But I've also had the complete opposite of that, of people acting like complete dickwads and not treating me like the human being that I am. Treating me as if my job on this earth, the reason I'm on this earth, is for me to simply serve them. And that's not the case. The menu puts a magnifying glass to that, and it puts many of us in a position of power that we don't feel like we're in on our daily lives a lot, or at least in certain parts of our life. Which is what I found very interesting about the menu. There were certain parts where I felt particularly therapeutic, and other parts that I was genuinely terrified for all of these characters. It's very haunting the way things happened, and also considering you know it's going to happen to all of these line cooks, and they're definitely involved in what's happening that night, but they're also victims themselves. It all goes to show this very cult mentality that exists in this type of restaurant, but we can also say that exists in other jobs as well. From the beginning, Margot takes the place of the audience. She is an observer to the odd behaviors of the wealthy. Small portions of food that is more of a status symbol than a delicious meal. From the beginning, Margot connects with Chef, though she's not exactly certain why. That all becomes clear later. While other characters are not at the focal point of this story, they still manage to play an important role in the film. I had mentioned the tech bros before, and one of them has my favorite, or it is definitely my favorite line in the entire movie, and that is when when one of the tech bros says, "It's just a tortilla," and the other one says, "A tortilla that will hold up in court." That's one of those lines that I, as a writer, wishes I could have written. It's incredibly funny, the way it was written and delivered and in the context of the entire scene. And I love those moments when I'm watching a movie or a TV series and I can genuinely just be so enamored with moments between characters and certain lines and just the dialogue in general. And this was a movie that really encompassed the breaking down of the hierarchy and the essentially where all of these characters are in their lives. They're maybe being told no for the first time, or they're being made to feel less than, or they're in an area where they usually act more elite than they are made to feel in their office, a la tech bros who aren't at the top of the food chain. We have Tyler, who I'm assuming came from money. He just seems like a rich boy who has all these, little hobbies that he's had since he was younger. How some rich kids full of nepotism, who have the luxury of nepotism, are able to just buy a camera, take a bunch of pictures, and Penguin publishes their book. I mean, that's nice, but that's not something we all get, and I definitely feel like Tyler is probably a nepotism baby in his life. I definitely feel that, and just the fact that he doesn't think that he has to follow the rules when it comes to taking pictures, and you see the relationship between the husband and wife, and she is asking him certain questions about who that woman is because he obviously recognizes Margot. And there's just these interesting dynamics when it comes to what someone thinks they are, and when they're put in this position of being treated as if they are now less than and they haven't been treated that way a whole lot, to see how that all crumbles is quite interesting, and the menu does it very well. Chef as the villain is masterfully crafted because we know from the get-go that he is the bad guy. He has this master plan, or at least from the get-go we know that something bad is going to happen, and he most likely is the person that is going to be doing something bad, or is at least leading the charge. Now, there's a part of us not 1%ers out there, who may look at what he's doing, and as I said I think twice before, it's therapeutic. We get to see the rich people cry. The rich people beg. But of course, we know this is bad. You don't want to do this. And we do begin to sympathize with the other characters. At least I know I did. And I think that goes the same with Margot. When they're having a conversation in his office and they're talking about, is there a time when you once loved what you did? And there's a connection that does happen between them. But the difference is, Margot is still able to sympathize with others, and she has her humanity. Her humanity has not been turned off in the same way that Chef Slowick and the people that works with him has. Now, I don't know how much agency the people who work with him actually does. We do see someone unalive themselves, and that was a shocker. Oh my gosh, I gasped. I didn't even prepare myself for something that was going to happen then, even though in retrospect I definitely feel like that was going to happen or something like that, you know? But that whole scene, it put into perspective how sous chefs and people who generally work in a kitchen, if they're not the chef and they come up with something, they're overlooked. That dish is not going to really be their dish anymore. It's going to be the chef's, and that puts a bit of a pin in that, a magnifying glass up to it. And again, we go to the situation with the other cook who ends up creating a dish where she puts her scissors in his leg, which note, I did not think that that was going to go into his leg. But that whole scene is really just drilling in that Chef Slowick is not somebody that we're supposed to root for. And I know there will probably be some sick people out there that do root for him, but if you're not rooting for Margot, then you're not doing the right thing. We stan Margot in this house. What's her real name? Erica? Erica. There are definitely people who want to know at least what Fiennes said to Nicholas Holt's character, Tyler, in the kitchen scene when he's whispering. And to be honest, I don't even want to know what Fiennes said to Nicholas Holt. I don't know what he was supposed to say, what the chef was supposed to say to Tyler. I just, seeing that look on his face and seeing every ounce of confidence or arrogance, anything that Tyler had just kind of melt away. And I feel like he could have told him what to do, and he just knew that was a decision or that he had to go by. Tyler is just very representative of somebody who can't make a real decision. He just goes about his life so nonchalantly in the most privileged way possible, and he would definitely do anything that the chef said. So if the chef told him to end it, I think he would. And I think that may have been what happened. Another form of elitism that is represented here is we have Janet McTeer's character, who is a food critic, and on her tortillas there are pictures of restaurants that were closed down after her review. Now, When somebody does a review and they influence whether or not people go to that restaurant or not, they're doing their job, but I do think there's a sense of, and my assumption is she's one of the big reviewers and the writers, and she's been doing it for a really long time, and she obviously gets to go to these really expensive restaurants, and so it's her being in a position in which she has the power to change someone's life in a good way or change it in a bad way. And she probably goes through her everyday life not really considering what she's done until it is pushed into her face, and then you've got the man who publishes it, and there's just a lot of different representations of elitism and how personal elitism or any type of personal privilege can otherwise affect other people. And Tyler affected Margot's evening, and luckily he didn't affect her life worse. A lot of my thoughts surrounding the elitism in the menu is inspired by a lot of the things that I've experienced in what I've worked, where I've worked, and places that I've been, uh, and other movies that I've watched. But there's this big conversation going around in regards to nepotism, nepo babies, and that is a type of elitism that a lot of people want to ignore, that they don't have that kind of privilege. And when you are able to have doors opened for you because your mom or dad or whoever, then you are definitely of some standing and you have that privilege, and it shouldn't be ignored. There are people who definitely take advantage of their privileges, and there are people who think that it gives them a right to be asshats, but they tend to ignore what they've been given, what they have. And that entire conversation really inspired me to look at the menu in a way that represents not only the elitism that exists in the restaurant business, but how each of these characters or groups of people represent different types of elitism in our world. The Menu is a horror thriller film. There are very suspenseful moments, and there are moments that just feel very real, and there are moments of pure dark comedy. And when you can find immense laughter in something so dark and outrageous, it's beautiful. And I find The Menu to be a very beautiful movie. And a lot of that comes to pass because of the attention to detail that the writers and the director has, and everybody who worked on this movie to make it the masterpiece that I believe that it is. You have Chef Dominique Grin, who came into this movie and helped make the dishes something that you may actually see in a restaurant. And it is that attention to detail that, yes, maybe not your everyday person is going to be able to really tell the difference, but it still adds something special to the movie and that extra layer of realism. And this is a heightened reality because, honestly, you could tell me this happened in real life and I'd absolutely believe you, considering the past few years and the things that continue to happen. It lends itself to the Twilight Zone, and the immense effort and all of the talent that was brought together to make this movie has made it probably one of the best films that's been made in the last 10 to 20 years. And come back to me in a year and ask me if I really feel that way now, but from the beginning to the end, it just had this incredible flow to it. Again, the attention to detail, the pacing, how the stakes were continuously risen through each scene, and the interactions between all of the characters and the groups individually, and then how they all interact with the chef, and It's a remarkable movie. If you've got to this point and you still haven't seen that movie, how dare you? And even if you did get the spoilers that this video allowed you and you haven't seen it, I still recommend checking it out. Honestly, I could watch this movie and watch this movie again. I was wholly entertained, and I don't know, I might go watch it again in like a minute, so we'll see. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I thoroughly appreciate it, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, I hope that you decide to give it a like, and if you enjoyed it and you want to see more of me, I hope you decide to subscribe and ring that bell to be notified every single time I post. For those that have seen the menu, I would love to know your own thoughts on it in the comments below, and if you have anything that you would like to see on this channel, please let me know in the comments below, and love to hear from you. All my social media will be linked in the description box below, and I will see you next time for a new video.